95 of Bolts. Here comes the caution.
Flag is dropped here at Daytona, and away we go for the first time. Nicholas Porcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Now, as we've got three wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let him go very far.
Go out here for Circuit Spa Francorchamps. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
Just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham's the one-on-one up into second place. Alex Johnson 6/10 the lead at the moment.
They're dicey up front. There's Andrew Kessel, Justin Sang.
They are ready to go. The lights are out, and away we go for the very first time here at Okayama International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the Alpha Touring Challenge. We are here today at Brands Hatch Circuit for race number 3 of Season 9 of the Alpha Touring Challenge. And my name is Mason Heimbaugh with Team Goon Squad, bringing you the action here tonight, 1080p, 60 frames a second, as we always do. Folks, it's going to be an exciting night of racing as drivers currently getting qualifying underway, seeing where they're going to stack themselves up here today for this exciting event. Last week, we saw ourselves heading off to Watkins Glen International, where we had the sprint feature layout. The sprint race winner, Micah Hendricks, coming away with that win for the sprint race. Ian Bertolucci coming away with the win for the feature event. And back here at Brands Hatch, it is a stacked field once again. Well over, looks to be nearly 30 drivers that we have here today at this absolutely infamous track here for the touring cars, and a lot of other cars as well. But primarily, it is where the touring cars see a lot of action right here at the Brands Hatch Circuit. Now, as we get ourselves ready to go and kicking things off here for the first time, just waiting for drivers to start to put in those times, currently getting those tires warmed up, as well as just getting through these first couple laps until they really start to put the temperature into those tires, and they can start to see what their actual times are going to be here. Not going to be... It is not going to be representative of what their pace is going to be like in the actual race itself, but it is a good idea of what their pace could be like going into the race here today. And today's race is also a 20-minute sprint race followed by a 30-minute feature, so drivers will have an opportunity 2 times throughout this race here to get some good points to contribute to their season. And speaking of points, which is something I haven't even pulled up yet, but so far in the point standings, Edward Gorman leading the field with 121 points. Micah Hendricks 120 points. So 1 point difference separating these two drivers here at the moment. So Micah Hendricks definitely going to be looking for a good finish for himself today. Edward Gorman, one of the strong drivers in this series, an independent driver, doesn't race with any teams, but has shown great performance not only in the past few races here for Season 9, but also if we go back to Season 8, the 137 just had some phenomenal races last season, and I think, if I recall correctly, he came away with that 3rd place spot in the championship, just behind, I believe, Logan McKenzie. So all 3 of these drivers that I just mentioned are all going to be gunning for that lead spot. And early off in the season, Edward Gorman, I think, is definitely going to be looking for a good result. Logan McKenzie, the 04 machine, also going to be looking for a good result here today. And a lot of these teams that are here this season are back here once again, including a few new teams. But the one last season, the dominating team, Curb Your Enthusiasm, already off to a dominating start. 249 points to the lead at the moment. Breakfast for Dinner in that second place spot with 176 points. And Yellow Flag Motorsports with 147 points. So, not exactly hope-inducing, I guess you could say, for the other teams that might be looking to come away with the team championship, but that is also the nature of a team championship, is that you got to have the drivers there to contribute. And while there are a lot of teams here that have the numbers and have been consistently showing up to races most of the time, there have been a few times in last season where, you know, there's only one driver for the entire team, or two drivers at most. But Curb Your Enthusiasm is kind of the outlier in that they've typically had at least 2 or 3 drivers in each of their races. So obviously having that benefit to them is going to help them in that team championship regard. But independently, we've seen kind of a swap back and forth between both Yellow Flag Motorsports driver, excuse me if I have to catch my words here, Logan McKenzie, with Yellow Flag Motorsports having a phenomenal season in Season 8, also contending with Curb Your Enthusiasm driver Micah Hendricks. So, two very different teams that ended differently for their team championships towards the end of Season 8, but as drivers, they've got some strong drivers in their field. So, a lot of this is going to come down to just how these teams can kind of deliver each and every single week, and what they can do to kind of help each other to improve their performance in each race. Brands Hatch here. This is going to be the first time that I've ever covered a race here at this particular circuit, and I've actually never been here to this track. So this is the first time I'm witnessing a race here, at least on the iRacing service. I've seen it plenty of times in other media and so on and so forth, but have not been able to actually call a race myself here at Brands Hatch. So it's great to be here, and I'm thoroughly excited for it. But this is, from what I've seen and from what I know about this track, is that you have to be careful here. It is a very easy track to make mistakes, and if it's, as you can see, a lot of elevation change, a lot of points in the track that you are going to be just trusting yourself heading into these turns in certain situations. But we'll ride on board here with Logan McKenzie for just a moment to kind of give you folks at home just a little bit of an idea of kind of what I mean when I say that. You'll have to forgive me, as the turn numbers are not going to be my forte on this one, but I will certainly do my best here. But Logan McKenzie, having just crossed the line, going to make his way into turn 1. And you can see there, Logan McKenzie makes it look extremely easy, but that right-hander of turn 1, it is an easy one to mess up, I can tell you right now, just from watching that. But Logan doing a phenomenal job of taking us on a little ride around Brands Hatch Circuit. And let's actually pull up some of our times here as well. And you can see just where drivers are putting themselves with about 6 minutes left to go here in qualifying. James Carr, the number 19 machine, able to come away with the lead here in qualifying, a 132.201. Nearly 0.2 of a second difference between himself and Micah Hendricks, who currently sits in that second place spot. Jordan Bachmeyer going to be in that third place position, the 151, sitting there in that second row alongside Dan McFarlane, the number 23, with a 132.466 as his best time, about a 5/100ths difference between both Bachmeyer and McFarlane. So these two drivers going to be fighting for mere millimeters of difference on the track, as we've got two drivers getting in contact with one another. here in qualifying, starting the racing a little bit earlier. Dan McFarlane going to be a victim of this incident here. I'm sure that's probably going to be looked at in the race control booth. I would have to imagine there's definitely going to be someone that's going to get a talking to of some kind. I would have to imagine. You know, that it happens. It obviously is always going to happen in these situations, especially with open qualifying. Everyone out on the track, all utilizing the track, and you know, sometimes there's faster drivers trying to navigate their way through the slower drivers, and ultimately, as we just saw, sometimes collisions happen. And to say slower drivers is, well, we're talking about mere 2 to 3 second difference in the top 30 drivers. We can go all the way down here to Brian Ballard, who's in that 30th place position at the moment, 136.331. Absolutely impressive. So a 4-second difference. Excuse me, I can't do math sometimes. But Brian Ballard able to stay within 4 seconds of the leader out of 30 drivers is just, to me, that is a rare thing to see in the realm of motorsports. Albeit these touring cars, I would say, are a little bit friendlier in regards to how hard you can drive them, how well you're able to stay in the draft of drivers ahead of you and around you, so on and so forth. But that does not mean that it is inherently easy to keep that kind of pace. It's not taking away anything from these drivers. It is pure skill that is allowing them to do that. It is just a little bit easier to do so with a car such as the touring car. You try and throw these guys into a Formula One car, or even the prototypes, the LMP1, LMP2, it would be a different story, a very different story. Although it would be fun to watch, I wouldn't recommend it. $30 LMP1s though on a track does sound quite appealing though in some way, but they are very difficult cars to drive, and that's why you don't see too many people racing them too often, at least willingly. A little bit of an off-track moment there. I believe that was from Brian Ballard. But either way, either how, about 2 minutes left to go here in qualifying before we see that checkered flag waved and we get ourselves ready for the first round of action here today at Brands Hatch. 20 minutes of the sprint race, followed by a 30-minute feature. And Jordan Bachmeier looking to start at the very front of this field. The 132.161 currently untouchable, as James Carr, David Bauer, Micah Hendricks, John Lazan, the rest of your top 5, look to try and shave as much time as they can off here with a minute 30 left to go here in qualifying. Bachmeier, I believe, is going to be another independent driver in the series. At least I'm not seeing his name attached to any teams here, so that would lead me to believe that he is going to be a solo driver here in this series. So for Jordan here, I also would have to, I believe this is also his first race, given I don't see him in the point standings at all. So I believe this is Jordan's first race here with the Alpha Touring Challenge, and showing up big here albeit it is the third race of the season, so he's going to be starting off at a little bit of a disadvantage here as far as the rest of the field is concerned. But again, coming in, showing up big in qualifying, able to come in third as James Carr. Micah Hendricks able to surpass Jordan Bachmeier by mere tenths, if not hundredths of a second. Qualifying now over, and our starting grid now available. Let's go ahead and run through it real quickly. James Carr, Micah Hendricks going to be up in the front row. Jordan Bachmeier, David Bauer in our second row. John Lazan, Dan McFarlane going to be in our third row. Logan McKenzie, Ian Bertolucci in our fourth row. Edward Gorman, Francois Schink in our fifth row. Matt Zepka, Jacob Wally taking up the sixth row. As we move on down the grid, Damon Mitchell, Mike De Almeida in the seventh row. Eric Statzer and Connor Ocatella taking up the eighth row. Kevin Clark, Trevor Lambert in our ninth row. Mark Darnell, Kurt Smith in our 10th row. Christian Ost, Ben Aiken in our 11th row. Brian Inaki and Luke Filippone in our 12th row. Moving down the grid just a little bit further for the last time, Brian Sohn, Archie Williams taking up the 13th row. Kat Wheeler, Josh Jabaruk in our 14th row. Zach Perry, Brian Ballard in the 15th row. Steven Chalifo and Brian Saab in our 15th row? No, 14th row, I think. Cody Leach and Randy Ayers taking up the 17th row. Landon Patmore in the 18th row. I can't do math today, but that is our field as we get ourselves ready to go. Drivers lined up on the starting grid as we await for the lights to tick out here for the first time at Brands Hatch Circuit for race number 3 of the Alpha Touring Challenge right here on Team Goon Squad. And here it is. The lights are ticking away. And out they go, and the tires light up, and the green flag drops, and James Carr, Micah Hendricks off to a great start. Carr able to get away from the field just by a little bit, as the rest of the field now going to have to manage their way through turn 1. Side-by-side action happening throughout all of this field. A successful turn 1 here for a majority of the pack. Let's continue with the action from up above just to see if there's any sort of mistakes happening. An Carr off track. Luke Filippone, the number 11, able to get back onto the track successfully. So we have another car. Francois Schink looks to be going off track for just a moment, able to stick with it. We didn't quite get the angle from the blimp camera, but I would have to imagine he was probably off in the grass for just a second. Side by side between John Lazan, Francois Schink. Edward Gorman trying to squeeze his way on through the mix here, climbing his way up the ladder. Starting in that 9th place position, looking to climb his way up to the top 5 and then some. More side-by-side battles continuing throughout this field. Christian Ost, Kurt Smith. Nearly door-to-door between the two, but they keep it clean. Right as I say that, Smith gets punted right into the wall. The number 3 machine now going to have to get himself recorrected here. The second breakfast driver now going to have quite a bit of distance between himself and the rest of the pack, and we tune in right at the perfect time for Jacob Wally, just clipping that wall. Goes off into the grass, and just behind him, more calamity. Cody Leach. Brian Ballard, oh no, it just continues to cascade for these drivers. Landon Patmore, oh, the rear end of the 191 machine. Definitely looking more sedan-like than it previously did a few moments ago. Great battle happening here. Logan McKenzie at the head of it. David Bauer, Dan McFarlane trying to get in on the action. David Bauer, the breakfast for dinner driver, trying to get as close as he can to the tail of Logan McKenzie. McKenzie doing a great job keeping up the pace, as well as closing the door here. Let's see if he's going to break up any kind of area there. He does. Heading off into turn one. Dan stays right on the tail. And just a little further behind, you can see Edward Gorman also closing the distance. As we see here, Luke Philippone, Archie Williams side by side into turn one. Archie Williams just barely able to get out in front of Luke by mere inches. Very lucky move here from Archie. I don't think he'll be trying that one more than once here today, though. John Lazan shows off track here as he brings it back onto the track right as we tune the camera to him. The 77 machine down 8 positions from where he started here today. Definitely going to be looking for a little bit of relief here. Try and get things sorted out for the 77 machine. This thing's not looking too great for the start here for John Lazan, as Eric Statzer now going to be at his heel with Christian Ost also just a few tenths of a second behind the number 77 driver, as more battles continue to develop throughout this field. Some battles dissipating a little bit sooner than others, but for the most part, drivers are staying within a few tenths of a second of each other at this moment. Oh, as Dan McFarlane definitely looking for a little bit of something here. We'll ride on board here with the 23 machine for just a moment, as he's been on the tail here of David Bauer for quite some time. And here at Brands Hatch, it definitely does not appear that it's going to be a very easy place for passing attempts to be made. You definitely are going to be counting on drivers to be making mistakes and capitalizing on those mistakes. A lot of very fast turns here that don't really allow the field to slow down enough to make any real kind of passing moves, I guess you could say. Dan McFarlane on a tear here. A little under 0.3 of a second separating these drivers as they come through the final turn. Onto the front straightaway and going to come across the checkered line. Turn one being one place that you can kind of get your nose in there if you're confident. And Dan McFarlane going to do so, as we saw David Bauer just barely starting to get a little sideways there. Won't quite be enough to make it stick this time around. But they're going to continue on with it as best as they can. Trevor Lambert, that we're watching with now the 333 machine, going to back off here for a second, try and put himself in a better position to Eric Statzer just ahead of him. So he's got now Mark Darnell, Kevin Clark just behind him, and a lot of other drivers starting to close in as well. We'll see if we can get a good picture of the field, or of this pack of drivers that we have here. Oh, into the rear end of Eric Statzer goes Trevor Lambert. I don't think that was an intentional move. We didn't quite get a good picture of it, but it gets worse. Multiple drivers involved. Christian Ost, Brian Anaki, Kevin Clark. getting the worst end of it here as he manages to get himself back onto the track. Zach Perry, I believe that was Zach Perry. Randy Ayers narrowly avoiding the contact as well. It came close to making a sticky situation not any better, but manages to avoid it. Had plenty of time to react as well, so great work from Randy for being aware of what was happening and avoiding that. Nearly halfway into the sprint race, and it has been chaos for a lot of this field. A few big incidents setting a handful of drivers either back down to pit road or to the tail end of the field, depending on how bad the situation is. Christian Ost, Brian Ballard, both involved in an incident here. Ballard gonna drive off. Christian Ost takes a moment to get the 157 up and running again, but he's back and rolling as he safely rejoins the track. Dan McFarlane, Logan McKenzie here in a little bit of a battle for fourth place as they come out of the final turn. Across the checkered line, getting ready to head into turn one again. Not many opportunities for passing, but there you can see that rear end just slowly starting to slide out from behind them. And if drivers aren't careful, they can end up in that sand on the left side or worse. And with that, those are the kind of errors that competitors are going to be looking for to capitalize on. As things calm down a little bit throughout the field, we've still got a few battles that have developed around the track here, one of which that we're watching now. Ian Bertolucci at the tail end of it. Matt Zepka as well as Francois Schink just up ahead. The two Curb Your Enthusiasm drivers staying within that top 10 again. When I was talking about the team championship earlier, for Team Curb Your Enthusiasm, this is ideally what they would like to see, is multiple of their drivers inside that top 10. Top 5 would even be better, but not always achievable. But needless to say, when your team is able to deliver those top 10 finishes, even if it is a sprint race, even if you're not able to do it in the feature, it all adds up. Those points all add up. And I think it is just great that they've built a team that is seemingly fairly well suited for what they're looking to achieve. And it's just great to see that. Especially here in the iRacing world, you don't really get to see too much of that that level of team coordination kind of happening. And I say team coordination in a loose kind of sense. These drivers are all helping one another to improve their racecraft, and all of the other teams here as well. They all do exactly what you would expect a team here to be doing. Practicing with one another, sharing tips, tricks, and other information that might help them improve their racecraft, and overall just trying to achieve the same goal of winning races and coming away with championships. As Ian Bertolucci still hot on the heels of Matt Zepka and Francois Schink. Not too much changing between those drivers. Dan McFarlane, however, looking to get himself into the top 5, looks to the outside of David Bauer coming out of the final turn across the checkered line. He'll be set up to the inside, heading for turn 1. Bauer to the outside. The breakfast for dinner machine going to be caught, left out, hung to dry, nearly goes into the sand. Oh, has to cut back across the track. Nearly goes into the grass on the other side. It's David Bauer now going to be back in the offensive position and trying to put himself back into the top 5. Dan McFarlane now going to be reeling in Logan McKenzie, who sits just about 0.8 of a second ahead of him at this moment. Dan McFarlane, the sim racing grid driver, looking quite fantastic out here today. And Dan McFarlane's teammates, Mark DeBauer, Colin Hopkins, and Landon Patmore, also representing Team Sim Racing Grid. We've already mentioned, we've already watched Landon Patmore a little bit throughout this race here. We also have, I believe, there's so many names here that I can't remember who's all here and who isn't. I believe I saw Mark DeBauer somewhere. Or maybe I'm just imagining it. Could have swore I did. Maybe I didn't. Okay, well, either way. I do know that Landon Patmore is here and Dan McFarlane, so 2 of the Sim Racing Grid drivers are present for today's race and looking to score as many points as they possibly can. And David Bauer, Team Breakfast for Dinner, another one of the strong competitors in last season, consisting of the one and only David Bauer, James Carr, as well as John Lazan. So James Carr at the front of the field. We haven't really covered too much of the front action, much at all throughout this sprint race. James he managed to build himself a rather impressive gap, and he's held on to it since then. So James Carr doing a fantastic job for Team Breakfast for Dinner and for himself, being able to come away with potentially a win here in the sprint race with less than 5 minutes left to go. James Carr could very well potentially find himself with a W on his season record, as well as having to start in the 10th place position if he does come away with the win here going into the feature. The top 10 drivers will be inverted for the start of the feature race. So if you finish first in the sprint race, as we have a driver off track, Brian Ballard, that's going to slow up our leader as Micah Hendricks closes the gap to under 0.1 of a second. Jordan Bachmeyer as well getting a good look at our leader. James Carr now having to scramble away from Micah Hendricks, who is now on another level of intensity. The door is wide open here for Micah Hendricks. He has an opportunity to come away with a win. Jordan Bachmeyer just hanging out, keeping up with the top action, and also seeing if he's going to have an opportunity here as well open up for him. But James Carr, just one little error and one driver off track trying to rejoin the track changes everything for the number 19 machine. And for Micah Hendricks as well, Jordan Bachmeyer, these two having a rare opportunity to fight once again for the lead with less than now 3 minutes left to go. And other various battles happening around the track. David Bauer, the 35 machine, showing he's coming down into pit road. You can see that there on the bottom of your screen. Brian Ballard also down there in the pits after the contact that was made between himself and James Carr. I don't actually know if there was contact made. It looked like it, but I can't 100% say that with certainty. Mark Darnell, Trevor Lambert continuing their battle for that 14th place position. A little further up ahead, the battle for 10th place developing between Connor Roccatella, John Lazan. We now have 2 minutes left to go on the clock. Trevor Lambert stays on the tail of Mark Darnell. And for the lead, Micah Hendricks, Jordan Bachmeyer, they just got to keep the intensity up here. But already, James Carr, according to timing and scoring, showing that he has the pace difference to continue to improve the gap between himself and Micah Hendricks and Jordan Bachmeyer. And it is already starting to show here. White flag is waved. This will be the last time around the track for these drivers as James Carr builds up that distance between himself and the second and third place driver. Jordan Bachmeyer, however, he sees an opportunity to move up into second place. Will he try and take that? Jordan having a fantastic start to today's race, leading a few laps. But ultimately, the newcomer going to be still in that top three here in the sprint race. It's going to be exciting to see how he fares going into the feature, starting off in that 7th place position. Or 8th place position. Yeah, 8th. I told you, folks, I can't do math today. I don't know what it is. But only a couple turns they've got left to navigate as we tune into a battle happening a little further towards the tail of the field. Cat Wheeler, Kevin Clark, the battle for 25th. Turning up to be a spicy one as the checkered flag is waved. And our leaders come across the line and take home their respective positions. James Carr with the win here for himself. Micah Hendricks in second, and Jordan Bachmeyer coming away in that 3rd place position. So we're going to tune along with the rest of the field, see if we can catch any of the other action that is bound to develop here. Cat Wheeler, Kevin Clark, this seems to be the battle to watch at the moment, as they were side by side for just a second there. Kevin Clark falling behind the 60 machine. I don't know if he's going to be able to set himself back up here for another. Oh, he makes me eat my words. As here we go, side by side, down through the last couple turns. Cat Wheeler going to have the inside line advantage, and there it shows. He's out of the final turn. There the checkered flag waves. Cat Wheeler across the line for 25th. And Kevin Clark coming away in that 26th position, followed by Jacob Wally also in that 27th place position as well. Second breakfast driver getting in a good battle for himself as our sprint race concludes and we get ourselves ready to go for our feature event. Let's take a look at our post-race results here and see where your favorite drivers finished, and also get ourselves ready for a couple interviews here if we can get the drivers up here. So meanwhile, let's go ahead. We can take a look at the drivers and where they finished up on your screens, and I'll have it scroll here in just a second. But meanwhile, we're going to see if we can pull up any drivers in here to have a quick little chat. Okay, so it does not appear that we're going to get a driver up here for an interview at the moment. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick moment up here in the booth to step away and get ourselves ready for the action 30-minute feature for race number 3 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, season number 9. Folks, you aren't going to want to miss the action that is getting ready to unfold. Drivers just getting in a little bit of a warm-up session before they go back out and get things started once again. The top 10 of the sprint race will be inverted, so that will mean we'll see James Carr start in that 10th place position. Micah Hendricks will be in 9th. Jordan Bachmeyer will be in that 8th place position. Logan McKenzie in 7th. Dan McFarlane in 6th. Edward Gorman in that 5th place position. Francois Schink in 4th place. Matt Zepka in 3rd place. Ian Bertolucci in 2nd. And John Lazan starting off the front of the field. So, folks, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned as we are going to be back with some more action here for the Alpha Touring Challenge, race number 3. And if you want to take the time, grab yourself a quick snack, a quick drink, you are more than welcome to, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back in just a few moments right here on Team Goon Squad. All right, folks, just a few moments left before we see the checkered flag waved here for our warm-up session, and then we will get ourselves ready to go and lined up here for the 30-minute feature here at Brands Hatch. Here we go, the starting grid. Nothing much has changed from the last time other than the top 10. So John Lazan, Ian Bertolucci starting off in the front row, Matt Zepka, Francois Schink in our second row, Edward Gorman, Dan McFarlane in the third row, Logan McKenzie, Jordan Bachmeyer in that fourth row, and Micah Hendricks and James Carr in the fifth row. For those of you that didn't get a chance to see the grid the last time, I'll quickly display that here, as we only have about 30 seconds left to go before we get back to the racing action and kick things off here once again for race number 3. That has already proved to be quite the exciting one. And I gotta say, Brands Hatch has been a rather thrilling track to watch a race and also call the action for. It has plenty to offer. But here we go. The lights go out. The green flag drops, and here we go once again. Some drivers looking to go 3 wide a little towards the tail end of the field as the front of the field scrambles for that lead. John Lazan, Ian Bertolucci, they're going to fight for that lead 1 and 2, and it's trouble towards the mid-pack. Drivers getting tossed sideways as 3 drivers currently trying to get themselves back going and in the right direction. Side-by-side action happening throughout this field as drivers are looking for every bit of track they can. And John Lazan up towards the front of the field, the breakfast for dinner driver, able to get away by about a half a second between Ian Bertolucci, Matt Zepka, and the rest of this field that is quickly closing in. David Bauer, Connor Acatella, meanwhile, side by side, banging wheels there for just a moment. And there it is, the contact is made. Off track, Connor Acatella, David Bauer. A quick rejoin, but it is close. As David Bauer rejoined the track, it was very close for David Bauer, and I believe that might have been Landon Patmore. I'm not exactly certain on who the other driver was there. Getting right up to the bumper, Kurt Smith staying right on the tail of Landon Patmore. Brian Sohn, Damon Mitchell, they're going to make their way down into pit road early, and probably for good reason. Kurt Smith, Landon Patmore continue to stay side by side there through turn 1. Kurt Smith going to back off, or Landon going to back off in the next turn. As we see drivers just absolutely pushing it here. Oh, Josh Jabarick going to find himself oh, whoa, whoa. Kurt Smith, big trouble here for the 3. A slow, whoa, Kurt. Good call. Good call. It sucks, but that is honestly the best thing that you could do in that situation. Not sure what the issue was there for Kurt, but definitely not one that you want to... Oh, boy. Brian Inaki at first was the first driver to get contact there, but Landon Patmore gets the worst end of it. The 191 machine sim racing grid driver scrambling to get back out onto the track now. Just Randy Ayers narrowly avoids the contact. Meanwhile, back at the front of the field, Ian Bertolucci has taken the lead from John Lazan. It now leads the pack with about a half a second gap. Four minutes into the race, and it has been a very interesting start to the feature. Seemingly a little bit more incidents than what we saw in the sprint race right out of the gate here, but looks like Edward Gorman, big trouble here for the 137 driver. And look at this. Nose to tail, nearly 3 cars long. That is a level of trust with your fellow competitors that is unmatched. We'll ride on board here for just a moment with Matt Zepka. Dan McFarlane just up ahead of him. Gets a little interesting there. Contact made to Jordan Bachmeyer. He now falls back just a little bit, rejoins the group that is developed here. Tries to keep in the action as more action develops just behind them. Brian Ballard, Cat Wheeler, side by side with one another. And Brian Ballard goes off track once again. I believe this is his second time. No, this is his first time. Wow, okay. I stand corrected. But that is not all. Trevor Lambert, Mark Darnell, back at it once again. And was that just a... What was that? Was that Jacob Wally just drifting it? Oh, he does it again. Look at this guy. He said tire schmeyers. It's like that episode, or not that episode. It's like Tokyo Drift. I forget his name. When he's learning to drift and he's going through all the tires. And he goes up and he's like, I need another set. And the other guy, he's like, that's like your fifth one today. Yeah, that's Jacob Wally right now in his pit crew. Oh, off-track moment for Brian Sohn. Someone. I believe that's Brian. Oh, Mike De Almeida. James Carr, big trouble here for the 19 machine. As there is just trouble all over this track right now. We can't seem to get a good camera angle here on the 19 machine as he gets back and rolling here. Oh, and not a good way. Oh, yeah, that is going to call it there for James Carr, unfortunately. Francois Schink, John Lazan, Ian Bertolucci, Logan McKenzie, they're all battling for the lead. Micah Hendricks as well. A 5-car group all gunning for that lead spot. John Lazan, your race leader. For Team Curb Your Enthusiasm. Fending off John Lazan to the best of his ability. Logan McKenzie trying to wheedle his way through the field as well. And Micah Hendricks, the defending champion here for the Alpha drivers. Looking to get a good finish here to get a good result here in the feature. Looking outside the top 3 right now, he's off to a good start, and with a little over 50 minutes left to go, he's got plenty of time to work, or excuse me, 50 minutes. A little over 20 minutes left to go here. He's still got plenty of time to work with. Cody Leach, Zach Perry, they go for a bit of a position swap here. Leach goes off track for a moment. There goes Zach Perry. Bobbing and weaving and right into the wall. The 56 machine, a big hit. Luckily able to get that car restarted, but you can see that smoke billowing from the engine bay. That is going to be a dead race car. Josh Jabarick, I hope I'm saying that right. I feel like I keep saying it differently every time, but I'm going to go with that one. I think that's probably correct. Cat Wheeler duking it out for 22nd here, side by side, heading off into turn 1. Kevin Clark, Cody Leach just up ahead of them. Bit of a loose battle between these two drivers. Cat Wheeler definitely looking to try and make a passing attempt happen here, or at least set themselves up for one. Meanwhile, back at the front of the field, Francois Schink, John Lazan, Logan McKenzie, Micah Hendricks, Ian Bertolucci, they continue this battle for the lead, or at least keep this pack as close as they can, as I'm sure they don't want to, I mean, realistically speaking here, they could all come down into pit road at the same time and keep this fight going out of the pits. But the chances of that happening, I would say, are probably less than 50%. But nonetheless, they want to stay, they want to keep this group going so that when pit stops happen, they can kind of strategize from there. I do have to imagine that, well, actually, so as we get a little bit closer to the halfway mark, sorry for my silence there as I was debating in my head whether or not they were going to take a pit stop here. I think they will, if I recall correctly. I think they have to make one. And it's right at about the halfway mark that they do so, or just a little past the halfway mark. I could be misremembering, though. My brain is not telling me, is not being very confident with me at the moment, so that's always great. What is great, though, is the action that has developed on the track here and continues to develop even towards the halfway mark of the race. And there it is, a pit stop from Damon Mitchell. Number 27 going to opt to come in here just a little bit before the halfway mark. But I would have to believe that will be a stop for tires, at the very least. And never mind. Damon Mitchell has retired from the race here, along with a fair chunk of other drivers in the field. Oh, Damon didn't come down into pit road. What? I'm very confused. Oh, I see what happened. Damon served a drive-through penalty. That's what happened. Okay, now things are making more sense now. Francois Schink, still your race leader. John Lazan, Logan McKenzie, Micah Hendricks, Ian Bertolucci. Top 5 drivers at the moment, still keeping the action up here in the top 5 to under roughly about a half a second. John Lazan definitely looking to try and make a pass attempt happen here. We can take a look out the rear of Francois Schink's 18 machine. Get a real good perspective of John Lazan and his efforts to make a pass happen here for the lead, or at least set himself up to be in a position to make that pass if that opportunity arises. Micah Hendricks still right on the tail of Logan McKenzie. I mean, all of these drivers are doing everything they can to put themselves in the right spot at the right time, so on and so forth. But again, this track is a very fast and flowing track, which does not pose a whole lot of opportunities for passing attempts. You are definitely going to be looking for mistakes to be made by the drivers ahead of you. Stan McFarlane gets right up to the tail of Edward Gorman. And if you'll remember, folks, Edward Gorman leading the point standings by 1 point ahead of Micah Hendricks at this moment. So for Edward at this moment, he's definitely going to be thinking to himself, he's got to get at least a couple more spots to stay within that kind of close battle that he has between Micah Hendricks. Now, Micah, currently in that 4th place position, could very well still see himself in that 2nd place spot after tonight is all said and done. But we'll have to wait and see where Edward's going to end up here with less than 15 minutes left to go before we can kind of deduce any kind of assumptions here. $18 minutes into the race here today, and I'm surprised by how calm things have gotten here ever since the start of the race. Things started very chaotically, and since then it seems to be a little bit of a different story for a lot of this field, having an opportunity now to kind of put their heads down and just focus on clicking off laps, which has resulted in the top 7 here, as we're watching now, being able to close the gap between one another. The top 8 have now managed to close the gap to one another. And from Dan McFarlane to John Lazan is about a 3-second gap. But when you're looking at it like this from the cameras, it definitely doesn't look like that. However, it is definitely a little ways up to the number 77 from where Dan McFarlane is currently at. However, he's still in that window of opportunity, and he still has the leader in his eyesight, which is, I think, a huge kind of motivator, I think, for a lot of drivers when you're racing and you find yourself, 3/4 of the way into a race and you're not sure how far away you are from the leader, and all of a sudden they pop up in front of you and suddenly you have a view of the leader, and now you have something to chase, essentially. It gives you something to kind of set a goal for instead of just focusing off and clicking off laps. We've surpassed the 10-minute warning mark. And we're watching now as Cody Leach makes a quick dive down into pit road. John Lazan starting to feel a little bit of that pressure as he's now in the hot seat. He was able to get around Francois Schink for the lead. But will he be able to hold on to that with less than 9 minutes left to go here for race number 3 at Brands Hatch? All of these drivers here are going to be gunning for positions here as the clock just dwindles down. And the action between these drivers is one mistake away from disaster. But given the amount of skill present up here in the top 8 right now, I am doubtful that will happen, that it will occur here, unlikely, to put it simple. All of these drivers just calm as ever. We'll ride on board here for just one last time with Dan McFarlane. Get a good look at the dashboard here as well on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. A dive to the inside from Dan McFarlane doesn't work in his favor. Edward Gorman has to navigate his way through. Able to do so, but now Dan McFarlane making a very bold maneuver, and I don't even know if that was intentional. It looked intentional, at least from the passenger seat it did. But yeah, that was a very, very bold maneuver. Unfortunately, did not work in favor for Dan McFarlane. We'll see if any of these other drivers are going to be feeling any similar senses of boldness here. I have a feeling that no one's going to be trying a move like that here with about 5 minutes left to go, but you never know. For Team Curb Your Enthusiasm, both Francois Schink and Micah Hendricks looking at a top 3 finish for both of them. I think they're both going to be relatively ecstatic for having a really good overall team finish. Going to be solidifying that lead that they have early on here in Season 9 for the team championship, and going to be continuing the legacy here in Season 9 after coming away with a team championship in Season 8. But here we go, side by side. Logan McKenzie, Micah Hendricks Excuse me. Gonna go for a little bit of a dance here between the two. Jordan Bachmeier looks to the inside of McKenzie. The battle for fourth place now developing. As Micah Hendricks ultimately allowing both him and his teammate to get a little bit of distance between these drivers behind him. And I think it's worked pretty well in their favor. Now Logan McKenzie, the next closest driver to the top three. And they're all going to be fighting for position. Ian Bertolucci, one of those drivers looking to gain a position here with only a few minutes left to go. Jordan Bachmeier just up ahead of him. Not being too aggressive here. But Edward Gorman, I think, might have some different ideas in mind, as Gorman has been fighting all race long and I think is going to be looking for a good finish here today. Again, Gorman at the moment, the current Alpha Championship leader by exactly 1 point ahead of Micah Hendricks. And Micah currently sitting in that third place position here in the feature. If he comes across the line that way, it is going to potentially mean Edward Gorman drops down from the lead here in race 3. But that doesn't exactly mean he's out of the picture. I think if there's any indication to go by that Edward Gorman has a fighting chance for this for season 9's championship, I think you just got to go back and look at his performance from last season. I mean, Edward was just doing phenomenal. And I expect that he's going to bring much of that same energy back this season and try and fight for that championship once again. As we start to see drivers clickety-clacking around, you'll have to excuse that. That is unfortunately something that I cannot resolve. At least not right now. Hopefully we'll get that fixed in the future so we don't have to witness that any further. But just about a minute left to go, and it is winding down to the very bitter end for some drivers here today, and for others looking to secure a position or two with 1 minute on the clock. Francois Schink, Micah Hendricks, the two teammates sitting in that second and third place position. Potentially going to have a little bit of a scrap of their own here with 1 lap left to go. They're going to come across the line, and this will be the last and final lap here for the feature race at Brands Hatch. You can see Edward Gorman just behind Ian Bertolucci as they come into turn 1. Edward trying to set himself up for a high-speed exit onto the straight, or short-ish straight. Ian Bertolucci doing a fantastic job keeping the momentum up here in the 51. And since we haven't mentioned it at all this broadcast, we got to give a quick shout-out as well to Mike De Almeida, who currently holds on to the Delta Championship at the moment with 50 points. The next driver in the Delta Championship in second place is Eric Statzer with 43 points. Zach Perry in third with 38 points. So can't forget the Delta Championship guys out there. They are also racing for their own points and their own well, not their own points. It's all the same points, but their own championship and their own set of goals as well. So Mike De Almeida doing a fantastic job of putting himself in the lead going into race 3. currently sitting in that 10th place position. I think he might just be able to hold on to that going into race number 4 next week. But for Edward Gorman, not quite the same story here, as a little bit of a, well, really just a tough race to be in, and having a very strong field here today, putting on a fantastic race as we come across the line. Our leader, John Lazan, comes away with the win. Francois Schink in second, Micah Hendricks in third. Curb Your Enthusiasm coming away with a double podium finish. Going to be a great start for them, or, well, it's going to be a great race for them here today. Logan McKenzie in that 4th place position. Jordan Bachmeyer coming away in 5th, as we see the rest of the field slowly start to make their way across the checkered line. And we'll also try and catch some of the final battles that are developing here. Brian Anaki, Kevin Clark, they're going to be side by side, and mere literal hundredths of a second separating these two across the line. Brian Anaki comes away in 19th, Kevin Clark in 20th. As they were both side by side with one another. I'm sure if we had a better camera angle there, it probably would have been not even a full inch separating these two drivers across the line. Absolutely impressive work. Here as we just see the last few remaining drivers make their way across the checkered line. And they finish out their race here today. We'll take a look at our post-race results and get ourselves ready for some post-race interviews. So if you're looking at your screens now, you can see where your favorite driver finished here tonight, and we'll casually scroll through that as we go through here. But just awaiting for some drivers to make their way into the waiting room, and we can begin some post-race interviews. And I think we're going to go ahead and start off with Mr. Micah Hendricks. Never mind. We can't quite start off with them yet, but we do have our race winner ready to go in the waiting room. So we're going to go ahead and start in a little bit of a backwards order here, but coming away with that win, John Lazan, absolutely incredible work. Coming away with a W for the team, breakfast for dinner, and as well as for yourself, John. I mean, you got to be feeling pretty good right now. This was definitely a tough race to come away with the win, and with the field that you had behind you, you know, it was not an easy feat. What's kind of the emotions running through your head right now?
Still shaking, actually. After he won the first 2 laps, I was all over the place. The car was so loose in the first before it warms up, but yeah, I was able to keep it together and keep my position for the feature. But once I lost, I was down to 3rd at one point. I thought that was it. I was just kind of holding on for dear life then, but I was able to battle back, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked great out there, not only for yourself, but for the field. Looked a little rocky for some drivers on the start of the feature. You know, seeing a few different incidents happening around the field. I'm sure that you probably didn't catch too much of it because you were at the front end of the field, but for some drivers, not exactly the easiest start here for the feature. What's kind of what do you think kind of is the key element here at Brands Hatch to being successful here?
Starting first. That's no, I started 5th in the heat. It's, man, when there's no place to go, there's people to the left of you, in front and back. it's tough racing. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It was not an easy thing to not only to watch, at least from the perspective of a fellow driver. It definitely is not an easy track to navigate. It's the first time I've ever been here broadcasting or even seeing a race here on the iRacing service. So this was kind of a learning experience for myself, but just getting to watch you guys and seeing how you guys tackle a track like this, it was definitely a very good experience and a great race to watch. But John, you were sitting 15th in the point standing coming into today's race. I'm sure after tonight that's going to change quite a bit, having come away with the win here tonight. What kind of motivation does that give you going into next week? It's definitely got to give you a little bit of a motivation booster, especially heading to Road Atlanta.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's funny because the first race of the season, I felt I had pace, but I loaded my quality setup for the race, so I had to pit twice. So that took me right out of it in lap 2 when I realized I didn't have enough fuel. And Watkins, I went in a bit cocky. Oh, I know this track. I didn't really practice that much, and shows where I ended up. But no, this one I put in some work for this one. So.
Well, it just goes to show hard work certainly does pay off, and John, I think you were a great example of that today because you put on a great performance, and I certainly hope to get to see more of that next week. But John, before I let you go crack open a cold one with your fellow teammates and drivers and celebrate, anyone you would like to give a shout out to or thank before you go?
Actually, I want to give a shout out to Francois and Ian. They were both that was good hard racing, good clean racing. There were some door banging there too, but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly hope to get to see more of that throughout this season. But John, congratulations once again on that win. Incredible victory here for yourself and for your team. I look forward to seeing you next week and hopefully get to see more of you back up here in the booth.
Look forward to it.
Absolutely. You have a good one. Alrighty, folks. That was John Lazan, our race winner, coming out of the booth here tonight. Up next, we are going to have Mr. Micah Hendricks coming away in third place here today, representing Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport. Micah, welcome back, the reigning champion here for the Alpha Touring Challenge. It has been a phenomenal race here tonight, and after tonight, I think you have now put yourself back into the lead for the overall point standings here in the championship. So overall, good night, not only for yourself, but for the team. Micah, I mean, this is definitely not an easy track in any sense of the word. So what was kind of the big key points that you and your team were looking to kind of hit here today? What was kind of the big goals for yourself and for the team today?
I think I had a little bit different racecraft philosophy here tonight. You know, trying to make a pass happen. I knew getting a good result in the heat race, I'll be starting further back in the feature. So instead of making my own passes happen, really, I don't think I passed anybody that wasn't first hung up by somebody else. So I think that was my biggest thought on tonight, was basically let other people do the dirty work for you and follow them through. So that was just being patient, waiting for mistakes, and working together as a team with Francois. We were able to come away with really good team championship points.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys are currently dominating the team championship as well. Much of the same from what we saw in Season 8. You guys have a pretty strong hold on that lead at the moment in the team championship. So it's been great to see the entirety of the Curb Your Enthusiasm team out there and just putting on the best performance they can, and both yourself and Francois coming away in a top 3 finish. That's always got to be a great feeling for yourself and for the team. But Micah, next week we head to Road Atlanta, and in my opinion, I'd say it's more or less the same of what we saw here tonight. A lot of high-speed action, not much passing opportunities, and also going to be a full sprint race, or not a sprint race, a full alpha race.
Yeah.
And so what's kind of going to be the strategy heading there? Full 60 minutes, and again, not a whole lot of passing opportunities. What's going to be the strategy for Road Atlanta?
I think the strategy is going to see kind of what our pace can be, because these tires just don't wear too hard, so you can push full out. I think Road Atlanta would be a little bit better track for the Audi. I didn't particularly like it here at Brands Hatch. A lot of the turns were in that awkward third or fourth gear, and we get pulled pretty hard out of the corner because one was too low, the other's too high. So I think to answer your original question, I think going into Road Atlanta is going to be, working with the team, seeing what the field calculations will look like, and, crunch the numbers on the championship. And then, I think big one for me is keeping some of these really fast people in check and see where the hour-long race takes us. So looking forward to getting back into a longer stint instead of just gloves off brawling like the sprint races are. So we'll see how next week goes.
Well, Micah, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's always great to get you up here and get to chat with you after a race. And great job from not only yourself and from your team. You guys all did absolutely phenomenal, and I look forward to seeing you guys come back next week and hopefully put on a similar performance. But Micah, before you head out tonight and celebrate, anyone you would like to give a shout out to or thank?
I think I'd give a big shout out to Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosports. For having some good team stuff with me and Francois there. Matt was in a really good position for back-to-back podiums, but it's one of those things at this track. It's so tricky. You blink just once and away you go. Shout out to James Carr. I know he had a little bit of an unfortunate incident there, probably 3 or 4 laps into the feature. He was the guy to beat here today. So shout out to him for putting in the work and just giving me somebody to chase down. And I think another one is a newcomer here, Jordan, for another really good race from him. 3rd and 5th for your debut is really strong, so shout out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan definitely coming out here and putting on a great performance for his first time here in Season 9. But Micah, as always, thank you for joining us up here in the booth. Congratulations on a spectacular race here today. I look forward to seeing you at Road Atlanta and hopefully get to talk to you again there next week.
Absolutely. Hope you have a good one.
You as well. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Alrighty, folks. Micah Hendricks coming out of the booth with a 3rd place finish here tonight at Brands Hatch for round number 3 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, season number 9. My name is Mason Heimball with Team Goon Squad. That is going to wrap up our coverage here tonight. If you enjoyed what you saw, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch all the action that we have here on Team Goon Squad throughout the week. And as always, folks, I will see you all same time, same place next week as we gear up and head to Road Atlanta for a full 60-minute Alpha race. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Oh, Pearson gets into the 95 of Folks. Here comes the caution.
Flag is dropped here at Daytona, and away we go for the first time. Nicholas Borcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Now, as we've got 3 wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let him go very far.
Come out here for Circuit Spa Francorchamps. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
Just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham's the 1-on-1 up into 2nd place. Alex Johnson 6/10 to lead at the moment.
They're dicey up front. There's Andrew Kessel, Justin Sang.
They are ready to go. The lights are out, and away we go for the very first time here at Okayama International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons